In the past, it has been easy for businesses to blame a poor quarter on bad weather. While that may be true, there are new and emerging ways for meteorologists to exploit what they know about the weather and in turn benefit a business's bottom line. It starts with acknowledging that weather is a risk, and we'll do that in this week's EarthBeat. Back in August of 2013, Penn State's Meteorology Department accomplished a decade-old goal of launching a new center, which uses our weather prediction capabilities to assist in decision-making. It is called the Center for Solutions to Weather and Climate Risk. The center is led by Dr. David Titley, meteorologist and retired Rear Admiral of the Navy, who has made a Weather World appearance before. The center's purpose is to minimize the risk that weather and climate pose in everyday life.
Well, the big problems, if you will, are how do we best use all the weather and all the climate data that we're already providing as the weather enterprise, both the U.S. and really even the international weather enterprise. There's just clearly ways to do better. The first is to really just sort of be able to acknowledge that weather is a risk, and not only is it a risk, but then there are a number of different ways of managing that risk.
Extreme weather events have big implications on business, government, and society. The combination of weather, climate, and decision-making is a new and significant direction within the field of meteorology.
Let's say you run the best managed ski operation in California. But if you're in the middle of a really big drought and warm winters, it doesn't matter how good your internal operations are, there's no snow. So that might be a place where you would want financial protection. Meanwhile, understanding it operationally, when to make snow, when it's optimum to make snow, when does the extended forecast say, yes, if I spend that money and time and effort and labor making snow, it's not all going to melt.
More and more companies are hiring meteorologists who specialize in weather risk because they recognize the potential for a more efficient distribution of resources.
It has been in the past kind of easy for many companies to say if they had variability in their bottom line or if they had an unexpectedly poor quarter to say, well, we had bad weather. And everybody says, well, yeah, you had bad weather. Well, nowadays, there are actually ways not only to minimize that through different either insurance or various financial instruments, but actually maximize sales. So how do you operationally, let's say, modify your supply chain logistics to say, hey, I need more snow blowers and fewer lawnmowers or vice versa?
Learning how to help stabilize a business's bottom line with the help of the weather is not common knowledge, and Dr. Titley helps to ensure that the seeds to success come from the classroom.
And what I try to do in that, and really building on the shoulders of Professor George Young and also Paul Knight, who many of our viewers know, really just trying to continue what they have done. And what that is really this intersection, as you mentioned, between weather and business. So we make sure that the students have a pretty good feel for like what options and derivatives are. But they get a lot of practical experience. So our friends and colleagues at both Mars Incorporated as well as Constellation Energy, they actually run labs. So we have simulated trading sessions for, let's say, if you're a commodities buyer because you're producing candy bars or some sort of food product, we have our students actually simulate trading in that. And similarly, we have them trading in the natural gas market.
As you can imagine, the weather affects just about every market in some way or another. So Dr. Titley also gets his students to engage in somewhat non-traditional forecasting.
So we will do things like forecast for the next 10 days, how warm or cold it is, and translate that into what we call a heating degree index, or basically a way to measure sort of the overall warmth or coldness of a place, and that has a direct impact on energy. I have the students actually forecast wave heights in the Gulf of Mexico. And it's like, well, what does that have to do? Well, if you're working oil services or any of the energy services, of course, the Gulf of Mexico, the U.S. has tremendous energy assets down there. You're going to need to be familiar with how can you access and extract those. We do a lot of Southern Hemisphere forecasting. The soybean market is a global market. It's not just the United States. So when we run this class from January to April, the real action in the soybean growing season is actually in Brazil and Argentina.
Another important result of this emerging avenue within the field has been the sprouting of partnerships between departments.
Student Club in the Smeal School of Business here at Penn State, and our Weather Risk Club. Smeal has a Penn State Energy Marketing Association run by students. We have a Weather Risk Club. And it turns out that the Energy Marketing Association was trying to project, let's say, 2-week and 3-week weather to figure out the demand or lack of demand, let's say, for natural gas or other energy. Our students do this. That's kind of their day job. But neither club knew of the others. So we were able to put them together.
The efforts of George Young, Paul Knight, and David Titley in establishing a firm weather risk education option at Penn State has helped to put graduates to work in places that 5 to 10 years ago may have been hard to believe. Those graduates are now helping businesses do better business.
They look at weather. They look at all these things where everybody else or many other people say, well, it just happens. It's like if you change your philosophy from, well, it just happens, there's nothing I can do, to, how would I use that information if I knew? You can find 5, 10, 15% gains. And if you put all those together, it starts making a difference.
So if you or someone you know is considering a meteorology degree, weather risk is a rather new avenue and a risk worth taking. For Weather World, I'm Ben Reppert.